What's up, Cavs fans? Spencer German, Spencer Davies, taking you live inside Madison Square Garden, where it is, it's the city that never sleeps. So there's still people busy. There's still people out and about. But we're wrapping up here from inside the arena. And plenty to talk about on the opening night of the season for the Cleveland Cavaliers. They fall to the Knicks, 119, 111. It's weird, Spence, because I think, we sort of made the joke in the media room. We heard some fans walking out of the arena, and a lot of Knicks fans doing like the bing bong, we're going to win the finals this year, like this is our year. And I think there was a lot of Cavs fans in their feelings, conversely, on social media. And it was sort of two dynamics where it's like one fan base feels like this means they're championship bound, and the other fan base feels like the sky is falling. I think the reality is it's game one of an 82-game season, and there's certainly some things that we're going to talk about that you should take away from this game. But I also don't think that we need to rush to any sweeping conclusions or bury the Cavs already because they lost the first game of the season. For all those people who say the regular season doesn't matter, why are we getting bent out of shape about one game? That's all.
Can't have your cake and eat it too, right? But I think when I look at this, okay, box score says that Josh Hart and Mitchell Robinson aren't playing, so you're expecting to win the boards battle there, and they didn't. And in the first half, I think the tone was really set for New York. They were just more aggressive. The Cavs just were a little too over-anxious, in my opinion, and that's going to be fair when you have 5 new rotation players coming in, and DeAndre Hunter, that's a wrench that gets thrown in as soon as the week starts.
That's the
start
thing.
Preparing for it, and then
you bring up Josh Hart being out, Mitchell Robinson being out. The Cavs were down 3 players that are either starters within the last couple of years or were going to be a starter this year in DeAndre Hunter. So I don't know that this game has to be like an indictment on either team in any sort of conclusive way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I know. I would say that too. But going to what Kenny said, he was thinking on the bus ride here, man, we're going to be playing 5 guys that weren't really in the rotation last year. And you can literally count them, Tyrese Proctor, Larry Nance Jr. You have Jalen Tyson playing real minutes in his first real start. If you want to consider those ones last year real, then by all means try to, but it's not the same when you're on the road at Madison Square Garden being depended on in a situation like this. And then, you have even someone like Craig Porter Jr., who I thought was going to actually play more, but he only played 7 minutes and didn't even see a second of action in the second half. So
Kenny said that was just kind of a feel thing.
Yeah, he said it was. Yeah,
not that he did anything wrong, or they just kind of felt like there was other guys that were maybe the hot hands, and so he didn't end up putting them back out there. But I thought that was an interesting thing.
Bottom line, to be honest, is just they weren't sound offensively, and to me, they were just off in terms of not having the right timing on cuts. In terms of, we're cutting the lead down, we're getting it to 8 or 10, and all of a sudden, Lonzo Ball throws a pass to Dean Wade when he's not looking, and it goes out of bounds. Or Jared Allen's trying to find Sam Merrill on the baseline, and he tosses it into the 12th row. Those are things that, okay, that, and especially on the road at MSG, you're going to put yourself behind the 8 ball real quick with that. And give them credit, man. OG Anunoby was really playing physical with Evan Mobley and the guys that were playing up the position a little bit. And I think, Mikal Bridges is someone that doesn't get enough love. Jalen Brunson, he had the stop on a dime mid-ranger working and getting to the rim, but he also had that neck snap working too. And I'm going to be a little facetious on that, but it did get Jalen Tyson into foul trouble, unfortunately. And that was, I think kind of a factor there. But to the Knicks' credit, man, they're a good team. They're a good team, and these two are probably going to be the ones that are playing deep into the playoffs and could see each other in a series, as Donovan Mitchell alluded to in postgame.
Yeah, listen, we got a lot to get into on that front, but listen, I think that you watch this game play out, and Kenny used the word clunky when he talked about the offense last week at the end of the preseason, and he sort of gave credence to the idea that was still the case today, that it still is a little clunky. He talked about how, especially with 3 guys out that are going to be key members of the rotation, and Strus, Garland, and Hunter, that he was trying some different things. You could see in real time He was trying some different lineups. He was kind of trying to see how different things worked. At one point, he had like a big lineup that was like Dean, Larry Nance Jr., and Evan all on the floor together. So he also went small and did like the lineup that you loved with like the guards around Donovan, where it was Tyrese, was it Jalen, and then also
CP.
Don.
CP was in there at some point.
It was Craig Porter Jr., Donovan, and Tyrese Proctor, I think, or maybe Jalen. But either way. Yeah, like so you could tell,
interchange with Lonzo.
Yeah, you could tell he was trying to sort of like spitball and throw some things against the wall and see what happens. And honestly, like that kind of is how a first game of the season should be. I understand like the stage, Madison Square Garden, the New York Knicks, team that you're being sort of compared to throughout the season. We think these two teams are going to meet in the conference finals potentially, and they're going to be duking it out at the top of the Eastern Conference. I get all the context that came with that, leading to us wanting this to be like this barometer or this litmus test type game. I don't know that we have to sort of sit here and like make sweeping conclusions though, like I said, because again, there was a lot of just Kenny Atkinson trying some things. Mike Brown is still trying to sort of learn his team too, and obviously he was on the winning end, so that's huge. But like, you know, he was missing people too. So if these two teams continue to meet throughout the season, if this is destined to be a playoff series, it's going to look a lot different when we get to April than I think it did tonight. That's the key thing.
And I think it's the communication with the new guys.
Yeah.
And I thought it was interesting.
Everybody talked about that in the locker room, by the way, and Kenny, like how they have to keep working on that, and that's one of the biggest things that they have to get better at.
Discussing the matter, Donovan Mitchell and Evan both said it's not just on the young guys to figure that stuff out. We have to lead the charge. It's us two that have to kind of take that leadership role and teach them, you know, and pretty much you know, you're on the road, and what better way to kick off your, you know, rotational career, and in Tyrese Proctor's case, his actual career on the road in a situation like this, national television. And here you are closing out the fourth quarter, like off the bat. This is a guy that's picked late in the second round. Like, you can't draw it up any better than that. But also, more to the point, Tyrese looks like he belongs. And that's what's, I think, a nice development that we've seen here early on in the preseason, and also just at the beginning of the year here with Tyrese.
Real quick, since we're talking about Tyrese, I just want to point out he made 2 shots tonight, and they were 2 of the biggest shots of the game. He hit his first bucket in the NBA with 4:58 to go in the third quarter. It was a 3 to cut the Knicks lead to 79-75. And then his second bucket of the night came with 11:43 in the fourth quarter, and it was a jump shot to give the Cavs a lead 89-87. So 2 moments where the Cavs were making a run, and then when they actually took the lead back, that he contributed to. He definitely looks like a player that belongs at this level and belongs in this rotation and belongs on the floor. And I think you saw, like, if you're looking for positives from tonight, I know everyone's reacting to the final score, and that's all people are going to remember. But I think the way Tyrese Proctor played tonight, like, he showed you something in terms of like how he fits into what the Cavs want to do this year.
And left elbow too. That jumper was so pure, just so quick. It's just like quick twitch that Tyrese has. I love how Donovan described it. He's got some Joe Ingles in him. He's got some FU to him. It's an Australian thing. So we'll see how that goes forward. My guys that I wanted to highlight when we're talking about positives are Sam Merrill and Dean Wade. I thought Sam Merrill actually had the best game of the Cavs tonight. Defensively, he was all up in full court, pick up pressure.
Which, by the way, I feel like part of the reason he got paid was for that defensive. Because that shined in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
And then he gets the big payday. So, yeah.
Well, you have that. You had the 5 threes that he made, but it's more than that. It's just the heady plays that he made. I think we're seeing him put the ball on the floor a little bit more now, that he's going to be given a little bit more freedom in this instance while the guys are out to showcase some stuff. I think even when the guys do get back, he'll still be able to do that. But, you know, him putting it on the floor, he said he worked on his intermediate game this offseason. That's big time. And then when you look at Dean Wade, Donovan said himself, when he's closing out, staying on his feet, not biting on pump fakes, going up and getting defensive rebounds. Heady plays, like when the Cavs turned the ball over, he immediately got a steal the next play to get them the possession back. So Dean, again, good game tonight. And for the most part, did not hesitate. He still needs to shoot more, though. This is a Dean Wade thing. I can't tell you how many times I see the guy pump fake, take 1 dribble, 2 dribble, get stopped and cut off, and then passes to the next guy. You just got to let it fly, man. And he had a nice 3, I think it was in the second half, that was pure in rhythm, and you want to see more of that because he has that in his arsenal, and they just have to bring it out of him. And I think we say this, and it sounds like a broken record because Dean's been in the league for a good minute now. But I do think, like, with the way he plays and what he's able to offer defensively, if he can just give you 2 to 3 triple makes a night, then you're in a good spot.
Yeah, I agree with you, and I think you even brought up during the game, like you saw and noticed that Merrill was also attacking the rim a little bit more too.
Yes.
I think that's part of his game that he's still sort of working on, and I think that was good. He definitely provided a spark on both ends of the floor, which is huge. Listen, I want to sort of move the conversation a little bit to the two big stars that obviously were out there on the floor tonight together, and Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell, what they sort of brought to the table today. Interesting point that was brought up post-game was the fact that early in the game, it was Evan who took about half the team's shots. And then in the second half, it was in the third quarter, I think rather, it was Donovan who took about half the team's shots, and Evans just sort of took like one shot. And so there, like, as we talk about this team going through some growing pains, which was the sort of theme of the headline here for the show, and as we talk about them sort of sorting some things out, communication and figuring out what's going to work, I think there is that dynamic too. Because I thought Kenny was awesome in talking about Evan after the game and what they're sort of expecting from him. I know you really want to talk about the one sequence where Sam Merrill hit it, or I think it was Dean Wade hit the three, Sam Merrill hit a three. The Cavs were trying to sort of mount a late comeback here late in the fourth quarter, and then Evan Mobley came down and he jacked a three, and you felt like, oh, you had numbers, it was in transition, attack the rim. And Kenny actually said at the game when you brought it up to him, he was like, I was actually okay with that shot. And I think that speaks to how they're trying to use Evan Mobley this year. And the word that Kenny used was kind of like free. They want him to play very freely, and they want to sort of unlock him and let him do his own thing and like roam a little bit. They're not going to like cap what he can or can't do. And so I think there is going to be a little bit of a filling out process, especially without Darius and especially without DeAndre Hunter right now, of who sort of takes the shots when, who has to sort of take over in certain moments. That will take some time to figure out, the same way that's going to take figuring out where these young guys kind of fit in as well.
Well, to that point, on the three, so what happened was Dean Wade hits a three.
Yeah.
They get a stop. Sam Merrill hits a three. And then the next possession down, they get almost a 24-second clock violation on Brunson. He's got to toss up a triple. Evan gets the rebound and brings it up court. And to me, he's got a smaller guy on him. I know that he's backing away and wants you to shoot that three, and I'm glad he has the freedom to take that three. I just think you put your head down, get into the paint, and maybe draw a foul, maybe finish, get an and one, something like that. Because I will say, I do like that we're seeing Evan Mobley sometimes hit, but we're seeing him take pull-up transition threes right now.
Yeah.
Like, this is completely different and out of the comfort zone of what we've seen. He is actively taking these shots. And like you said, in the first quarter, he was letting it fly. Sometimes it was not great shots. He was trying to hit contested pull-ups, midway fade, fadeaway middies in the paint, over OG Anunoby. But this is good. Like,
yeah,
you usually see Evan like that. You have to force feed him to get him going, but he was just being decisive. He was his own engine tonight, and sometimes you have to find that balance between, all right, maybe I got to move it here instead of take this three and something like that. But in that situation, I was not a fan of that. Me and Kenny are usually on the same page. On that one, we weren't. But to that point too, Evan said he loved the shot and he thought it was down.
Yeah, he thought it was going in.
He thought it was down.
So. That is true.
But I think that's part of, and sorry, I know you're going to make a point.
You're okay.
But I think that's part of why the Cavs were a little bit clunky early on. It's because they weren't touching the paint. But at the same time, Kenny said that they just couldn't get by New York's defenders. They were up into their shirts and just could not create separation. So that was the problem. And then when you're forced to have a perimeter offense like that, you're shooting a bunch of threes. And yeah, they made more and they looked better. But it's not going to lead to much late in the game because you're kind of stuck out there on the perimeter. But luckily in the second half, they did figure it out and start touching a little.
Yeah, I actually side with Kenny on this one for the sole fact that, game one of the season, and if this is part of the evolution of Evan learning where he should or shouldn't do things,
let him make mistakes.
I'm okay with it. And Kenny even said he didn't think that was a mistake, but he did say, like, there are some that they're going to sit down and watch the tape, and he'll point out to Evan, like, hey, maybe this is a situation where you should pass it. maybe maybe the way OG was playing you here, not the best look to sort of drive it, whatever. So they'll work through those things. I'm okay with him taking that one and living with the results, game one of the season. And I think this is all sort of part of that process. But if you were expecting the Cavs to come out and be like 15-0 to start the year like last year, that's not going to be the case. I think it's going to take a little bit here for things to kind of get rolling with Donovan and Evan, as you reinsert some of these guys back into the rotation and the starting lineup that are hurt. And the young guys, obviously, who are getting bigger roles on this team as well.
And with Don and Evan's dynamic, I thought it was interesting in his answer. So it's like, DG and me have that back and forth. We kind of know it because we've been playing together for so long. Now, me and Ev worked last year because we were in the rotation together. But in this case, it's different. Yeah. This is different because Evan's going to be the aggressor now. So how do you find a balance between Evan and Don? You said it yourself. In the second half, Don got himself going. Oh, he had 21 in the third quarter. Was
brilliant.
Oh my god,
he was unstoppable. He hit like he had the first 10 points of the quarter. It ended up being 21 by the end of it. It was one of those like classic Donovan Mitchell takeover moments, and you felt like in that stretch, maybe the Cavs are going to win this thing because Donovan's going to kind of will them, but how are they going to respond in the fourth quarter? And then things kind of unraveled in the fourth quarter. It was sloppy again, all those different things.
Yeah.
And Donovan even said, like, early on, he was trying to set other guys up. And then in the third quarter, he sort of felt like, all right, this is where I got to step up. And so he stepped up. And then the fourth quarter, again, I think it's just that feeling out process of like what to do where, who to sort of lean on in certain situations. And even Kenny said he doesn't want this to turn into, we just turn to Don every time we need to come back or make some plays. Yeah. So listen, but Donovan talked about it at Media Day being in like mid-season form already. I think he proved that tonight. Got to be careful with his minutes, obviously, but he was brilliant tonight per usual, 31 points. And he was the Donovan Mitchell you'd expect on the biggest stage, Madison Square Garden, where we know he loves to play.
His footwork is just sensational, man. I just love watching that. And then you have the contested mid-rangers that look like bad shots, but you could just tell when he's got his rhythm and he's feeling himself, he's going to take them. And okay, go for it. Here's a step back. Go for it. Like, it's so fun to watch Donovan Mitchell play, but that's not how they want to be. Like, the Cavs want to be back to that team ball, and we've seen so much of the team ball last year, and this time I think being down DG, being down Max Strus, and in this case tonight being down Dre, it's forcing them to learn. Yeah. It's forcing them into the situations, and I think this is actually beneficial because what if this happens in the playoffs again where someone's hurt, right? You're going to have to figure it out. So they're going to figure it out on the fly. Right now is I don't want to say right now is a perfect time. We just started the damn season, guys. Like, this, like we're talking like it's December already. No, man, it's not even November yet.
Yeah.
But no, I think that second half was a lot more promising. Still not where it needs to be. Got to figure out the turnovers, stuff like that. We still haven't even gotten to Lonzo Ball. Lonzo Ball taking 7 threes.
Yeah,
he was I did not expect to see that
but
many.
You saw his prowess as a handler and like a passer and setting other guys up. Like, he had a couple really good looks where he got the ball into read the play the right way and got it to a guy breaking to the basket or under the basket.
He's going to be really good for Evan. Like, when you have Evan on there, because you're going to not have him fade to the sunset if Lonzo's on that floor, because he is going to make sure he gets him the looks he needs to. Yeah. And if he's going to be aggressive and take some shots, I think Kenny's probably okay with that. Maybe 7 threes was a little too much, especially when some of those were not great. Yeah. They were not great.
He started the game 0 for 4 and they were all threes. So, but we can obviously get into Alonzo a little bit later, not tonight, because there's 2 other big things I wanted to hit on. The first one being Jarrett Allen had a really rough night tonight. Oof. And, the social media jokes and all that wrote themselves. People just leaning into like, oh, it's MSG. The lights must have been too bright for him. He's soft, blah, 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 blah. I don't want to rag on JA too much right now because, again, it's game 1. Things happen. I do think this Knicks matchup is a bad matchup for him. I think that's always kind of been the case. But he definitely, you saw it. He got played off the floor tonight. Like, I wondered if Kenny was even going to put him back in at the end of the game.
I thought Larry should have been in.
Larry was giving you more. He was knocking down the threes on the outside, and Jarrett just doesn't have that as part of his game. It's going to be a very interesting conversation and storyline with JA this season, because we know everybody in Cleveland loves JA. I love JA. You love JA. But like in certain matchups, I do wonder about how he'll fit, how he'll play. We've seen him get played off the floor in the playoffs before. And when you're thinking about a potential series with this team in the playoffs come April or May, like that stuff all is going to factor in. So it was a rough start for him tonight. I'm not saying like close the book on JA, trade him, all those things. The Cavs obviously want to try to make it work. But I do think there was, this was not the way you wanted to see him sort of start the year when he's still trying to sort of make sure he has that prominent role and he's delivering when he needs to. He missed a lot of bunny shots, just like real close to the basket. He can't miss those. Like that's part of his game. That's the key part of his game, and they need him to knock those down. So yeah, just a rough night for Jarrett, and I hope it's not a sign of things to come.
No, I hope so either. I asked Kenny about him pregame because I feel like no one's talked about Jarrett Allen at all. So I was like, look, I know you guys at the beginning of training camp said you wanted to get him in some lineups, get him into some situations that are uncomfortable against 5 out. And, a lot of 5 out tonight for Mike Brown. Yeah. Cat playing the 5. I know that Ariel Hikporty started, but you had a lot of Cat at the 5, so you're stretching him out. You're bringing him out of the paint. So where does that leave him? Offensively, what does that do as well? Like, so it's, if you're not going to make shots that are point blank, that are really well set up for you too, like, you're going to be in a really tough spot. I know he sets good screens. I know he cleans up stuff on the offensive glass. Well, I'm not going to make the sweeping conclusion like you were talking about, but like, especially if Evan's on the ascension, as we've been talking about all summer, if this is a sign of things to come, then he's not going to be here.
Yeah. Well, and you talk about the glass. The Cavs lost the rebound.
Yeah. Very badly, by the way. Very badly in the first half.
Well, it was a really big discrepancy there. Yeah. And Jarrett is kind of counted on for that. Like, they need him to be that guy that grabs the boards, and that just wasn't happening.
You got to box, too. You got to box out.
Listen, that's
a body.
Jarrett's role and Jarrett's fit is going to be something that we pay attention to all season long. It was not the best start for him tonight. I think that goes without
not at all.
It had to be highlighted, but yeah, it was an unfortunate way for him to start the season. The last thing I wanted to hit on was just what Kenny said pregame, because we didn't get a chance to really talk about this much. I wrote a story actually about this over at roundtable.io/sports/NBA/Cavaliers. I know that's still a mouthful, but you can check it out over there.
It's scrolling on the bottom.
It's, yes, you can see it at the scroll. Kenny, I thought really challenged his team with the way he talked pregame, because he went right into the fact that everyone's calling the Cavaliers title contenders and all this different stuff. And he said, guys, we're 11-15 the last 3 years in the playoffs. And obviously he wasn't here for 2 of those years, but they're 11-15 in the playoffs. And he flat out said, like, my definition of a contender is a team that's in the conference finals or in the finals. And we have yet to get there. So it was basically him saying, like, if any of these guys think that we've arrived, like, hey, everyone's picking us, like, we feel good about ourselves. Like, no, we have a lot to still prove. And I thought that was the right way to sort of set the tone for the season. Maybe that didn't come out on the court tonight with a win, but I do think like he really set the stage and set the tone for how this team is approaching this year. And I think it also sort of goes back to what Donovan said after the series lost to the Pacers. The whole idea of like, we could go 82-0 and no one's going to care. I think there's a lot of truth in that. I think they know that. I think they know they have to show up in a big way this season and prove that they are worthy on that stage, because they've fallen short time and time again.
That sly guy, Kenny Atkinson, saving the best for the very beginning of the season. All of this time, we could have had that quote before with training camp and preseason. He waits until game 1 to spit that fire out, man. But I love it. He's turning up the heat.
Yeah.
As he should be. As he should be. We talked about it on our podcast all the time, man. You got to, at some point, progress.
Yeah.
I know that they've had their share of injuries the last couple of years. But at this point, the way that the Eastern Conference is set up, the way that the injuries have come into play, it's put up or shut up time, man. And this is what it's about. And I think that Kenny preaching that, apparently, since day 1 of training camp, even though us in the media did not hear that, I think that's a good thing. You want to hear that. And I feel like Donovan has carried that fire, that edge as well throughout preseason and training camp. And this message is just going to trickle through. And I feel like very measured always is Donovan. And tonight he was, you think, you see a loss like this and the way that, they came out in the first half, and you think that Donovan would be a little bit more pissed, but him and the locker room were actually pretty okay. Yeah. And I think that's a good sign. Like, they're not like sky falling type of guys.
And they shouldn't.
And that also reflects the attitude of a Kenny Atkinson. But just because they were that way in the locker room tonight doesn't mean that in the long term and in the big picture, they're not thinking the way that Kenny's talking about, saying, hey, you guys are 11-15 the last 3 seasons in the postseason. Let's figure it out, because it's this core that's been a part of that.
Yeah, and I think it was great that he challenged that core group of guys that's been here to sort of have those battle scars these last 3 years. I think it was the right way to start this season with that tone, with that sort of assertiveness of in terms of like what he's expecting from them. I loved it. But yeah, I like there's no reason for these guys to be like in that locker room hanging their heads right now. Again, it's one of 82. There's an entire season still in front of you. Sure, this means they're not going to start 15-0 again and match that streak from last year. Whatever. It means they're not going to go 82-0. Whatever. As long as they're learning and getting better and growing along the way. And if it ends with them making a deeper playoff run, that's what you're hoping the end result is. So I loved the fact that Kenny said that, sort of lit a fire under his guys before the season started. Obviously, again, didn't equate to a win tonight, but I'm sure we'll see the fruits of that labor play itself out as soon as Friday, where the Cavs are staying in New York to face the Brooklyn Nets on Friday night. Spence, you will be sticking around here in New York to cover that one. I unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, I get to go home and see my family, and I have to go to Boston for a different sports team in town. But it'll be a nice game on Friday to sort of bounce back here, and we'll see if the Cavs can pull that off. So make sure that you're following along, as always, over at roundtable.io/sports/NBA/Cavaliers. On the scroll there, you can see it. I've memorized it at this point. And stay in touch and stay in tune with everything going on with the team here in the next couple days leading up to that. Spence will also have you covered over at the YouTube channel, where many of you are watching this right now. If you haven't subscribed, please do so immediately, because we'll have more content like this for you throughout the season. Post-game conversations like this.
Donovan Mitchell's up there right now. Sam Merrill, Evan Mobley,
all the
Kenny
press
Atkinson's
conferences.
all up there.
Yep, that's right. All the press conferences will be up there. So a lot of different ways that you can stay in tune with your Cleveland Cavaliers. Big thanks to Anthony Meglin on the home front producing this for us.
Shout out to Megs.
For Spencer Davies, what's been your favorite part of New York so far, Spin?
Honestly, I haven't really been able to explore enough. I feel like I've been on a subway for half the day.
It's going to be that drink that we go out after this.
That's exactly what it's going to be. I think I already have a little bit of motion sickness or something in my head right now because it's a little bit dizzy. It's been a long day, but hey, I've enjoyed it so far. The hospitality's actually been pretty good, and I've got my partner here to my side, so it's all good.
It's been a good day. I would agree. As much fun as you can have in New York, I think we've tried. For Spencer Davies, I'm Spencer German.
Spike Lee, that's who it was.
Oh, yeah. That actually is probably the highlight of the trip. Yeah. Real quick story here. We were standing courtside, and Spike Lee walks over in like his big orange suit that I'm sure you guys all saw on TV. And he was literally like making a beeline right for Spence. And I was like, uh-oh. And he got closer and closer. And he was like, excuse me. And Spence was standing right in front of his seat. He was trying to box out Spike Lee.
There's a Spike Lee rule.
Spike Lee at Madison Square Garden?
There's a Spike Lee rule. And what I told him, I shook his hand and I go, hey, man, this is my first time in New York. He's like, your first time?
How old are you?
I said, 33. And he's like, were you in jail?
It was pretty funny.
It was an interesting moment. But now I've had my moment with Spike Lee. And
you got to meet Spike Lee.
His Riddler outfit.
Mello was here getting honored for being a Hall of Fame. There's a lot of
Bernard King,
as you'd expect.
That was awesome.
Regardless, guys, thank you for following along. Be sure to stay tuned because, like I said, Spence will be in Brooklyn right across the way here to cover the game on Friday. And we'll obviously have you covered as always. Keep in touch with all things Cavaliers over at the Cleveland Cavaliers Roundtable.